So good morning, dobre. No, one's enough. Okay. So it's a great pleasure to be with you today. Always nice to come back to Bratislava. So I live in Switzerland. I was born in Germany, but I spent 17 years in the US. So if I speak too quickly, that's why. Because in America, if you speak slowly, people leave. So that's why I have a bad habit. I think we have translation if you need it. I think we have translation, right? So you just have to get the headset if you want. So my new book, Technology versus Humanity, is available. I think we have some more copies outside. And I signed all of them, so you can sell them on eBay now for €5 or something like that. So this device here is our second brain, right? This is my external brain. I keep my phone numbers, my banking, my music, my media, my contacts, very soon my health records, right? My DNA will go in here, my banking, my money, everything. And this machine now has the computing power, the same computing power than the computer that brought the Americans to the moon. Right? It's in this machine. In 10 years, this machine will have 1,000,000 times the power of this phone today, and it will cost 1/10. Technology is really mind-boggling in terms of how it's moving. It's hard to believe the speed of things. You know, this is really, as a futurist, this is my job. So as a futurist, I don't predict the future. Okay, I observe the future. And this is, by the way, if you're looking to be ready for the future, this is the #1 skill you have, is to listen. Okay? Because when you understand the future is how you can get ready for that future. Very important also to notice the future is not like today. It's actually completely different. It's not an extension of today. I mean, it's funny when you think about the future. I used to be in the music business, right? So I was a musician and producer. I made records. And we used to sell records, and then we would say, okay, a successful record, you know, you sell 100,000, 200,000 copies. But today, in the music business, you don't sell music. Spotify has 20 million songs and costs €10 a month. Today, in the music business, you don't sell copies. You sell the brand and the access to music. So it's a completely different business model. And this is why I think for us sometimes it's hard to imagine the future, because our business is today. For example, the car companies in Germany, they're going from selling cars to selling mobility. So it's only a matter of time, I would think maybe 5 years, before we have a Spotify for cars. You pay a flat rate and you get whatever car you want. That's already in place in the US. Cadillac already has a flat rate. You pay $1,500 and you pick up any car you want. That is the future. That is quite painful, you know, because the future is not like the past. So if you currently are successful, it doesn't mean that in the future you will be successful with the same thing. In fact, usually it's the other way around. Because, you know, technology is transforming every single sector of our society. So first the music business, the media business, now the car business is on top, and on the beach, right? On the beach we have the banking business waiting to be changed. So the banking industry is at the same point than the media companies were 10 years ago. Dramatic transformation. I would think most of that is pretty positive, but it brings huge challenges and opportunities, right? Because we have to have leadership. You know, technology is now capable of pretty much anything. Right now, today, you know, if I speak to my mobile phone for translation into Slovak, it kind of works, but not so good. Right? It works a little bit. In 5 years, all of the things that are kind of working today are completely normal. Language translation, autonomous cars, the Internet of Things, connected devices, right? Airplanes without pilots. I mean, things that used to be science fiction. In 20 years, we can probably switch the entire global economy to renewable energy because of technology, right? Solar energy. In 30 years, we can change our DNA to not get cancer. I mean, the slope is mind-boggling. Right? So basically, this is the biggest issue that we're having today. Right? We have good technology, and we have technology that can be abused. You know, technology is neutral. It has no ethics. It doesn't care what we think about values or human ideas. Yeah? I mean, for example, when we talk to a client, many things that happen when we talk, they're not actually said. The most important things in life are not presented straightforwardly. They happen between the lines. Right? The things that you talk about, what's more important is what you don't say than what you say. Technology is not like this. Technology is just zeros and ones. Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, but many of them. Right? If you give technology the mission to make paper clips, as many paper clips as possible, if the technology can do it, they would make paper clips out of us, right? They would have no limitation. And so this is really the important part is, you know, as William Gibson says, technology is morally neutral until we use it. And we're going to use technology everywhere. Right? Health, digital money, blockchain, transportation, smart cities. And the technology business is now the biggest business in the world. You know, data, technology, IT. I'll show you some slides on this later. But this really means that we have to apply what we want to technology. We cannot just proceed just because it exists. We have to think about guidelines, ethics. You know, basically what's happening today is that technology is shifting from programming, you know, from being programmed to do a job, to thinking. I mean, technology can actually understand things now, called cognitive computing. Oh, by the way, I forgot earlier, I want to thank Cisco for sponsoring the book. You know. Thanks, Cisco, wherever you are, for talking about technology, right? So it just reminded me of this. Right? So basically now machines are starting to become intelligent. Okay? That means they're no longer just calculating. And the biggest change in the next 10 years will be machines that can kind of think like us, but in many ways not at all like us, right? Because we think differently. When a human thinks, we don't go back in our brain and we retrieve information. We don't go and say, let me take the JPEG out and take a look, right? Humans think completely different. When a computer thinks, it goes back to a place to retrieve information and to look at it. It's a very big difference. So really what's happening here is that now in the next 10 years, machines can hear us, they can see us, they can understand us, they can simulate us. That's only like 5, 7, 8 years away until that's really perfect. If you're a bookkeeper today or financial advisor, the machine has a hard time doing what you do because it's still pretty stupid. So bookkeeping, you know, you need to look at the receipts and put them in the right file. But now there's a first software called Xero from New Zealand that is essentially a robot doing your bookkeeping. Okay? So Xero costs 200 euros a year, and it does the same than your bookkeeper, which will be 2,000, 4,000, 5,000 euros, whatever. So machines can now do this, and they will no longer be programmed, but they're learning. Again, this is not learning like us, completely different. But the city of Los Angeles just put all of their traffic lights online. They connected all of the traffic lights in the city, 4,700, and then they told the computer to take a look and see if we can save energy or pollution and reduce the time for commute. And so the computer looked at something like over 1 trillion different ways of how vehicles move. And then it said, if we change it like this, we can save 10 to 12% of gas and reduce pollution. That's what the computer can do, right? It's very, very large-scale thinking. Now we're going into a world where we're talking to computers. I mean, this used to be science fiction, right? Remember Space Odyssey and you know, all of the ideas of talking to computers? We're about 1 or 2 years away from total perfection. So right now, I'll show you a live demo here. So when I speak, let's say, I'm going to use this app called Say Hi. Say Hi is an app I use all the time. Okay? And it's basically translating in real time. So I have it set for Norwegian. I don't know Norwegian. Let's give it a try. Okay. Hello, it's really a great pleasure to be with you today. Well, you want to say something? I think it's because I turned the sound off that it's not working. Or is the internet? Ah, that sounds perfect, doesn't it? I mean, so the other day I was in Japan speaking to the sushi chef in German, and he spoke back to me in Japanese. And it took basically a few minutes for that to happen. We talked for 30 minutes. So now we can talk to machines to buy things. We can talk to machines to be our assistant. Right? Here's some examples. Right?
Alexa, what's my commute?
Your commute is about 1 hour.
So the most famous one is Amazon Alexa, Amazon Echo. I've sold 16 million copies in the US. It's a box that you speak to, and you can buy stuff from Amazon, of course, but you can ask for the weather, you can change the music, order television. So the voice interface will be the future. We will not have a computer, we'll just speak. So a few weeks ago I was at a television studio, and we looked at the future of TV, and we all sat on the couch, and the screen in front of us, and you could say anything you want in like 30 languages, and you could say, I want to watch Kojak, 1985, 21st minute, we'll just start playing. That is the future of how we do computing. So in the future, if you're a travel agent, your customer just goes to an app and says, I need to go to Rio de Janeiro. And the system knows who you are, it knows everything about you, it knows all the details, and it just does the work. Right? So we're seeing this future basically that may end up like this, where computers have their opinion. Right? So the computer will say, well, they're going to help us go on with our lives. Right? And then maybe eventually we're going to live in a society where everything gets advice from machines. Dating is the best example now. Right? Now you can have artificial intelligence helping you with dating, which would be very useful. Right? Maybe in the future you can date the artificial intelligence, be easier, like in the movie Her. Right? So you wouldn't believe how many dating situations are now actually done by robots. If you look at the graphs of dating, which I'm married, so I don't do much dating, but how you meet people is declining with friends, is declining like this, and on the internet and using dating like Tinder, that's not really dating, but it's exploding. That's changing our society. Very soon we will have robots, therapists. Right? That's already, you can talk to people on the internet to help you with your problems. Now that is a very strange idea, but quite clearly I like to say technology is heaven and hell. Hellven, it's called Hellven. It's a big word in my book. This really means that technology can be both really terrible and really bad. The best example today is Facebook. It's a curse and it's a blessing, right? And it could be the same within an hour. Right? So if Facebook is a platform for manipulation, that's definitely not good. It's a platform for connecting, that's good. Right? Free phone calls, that's really good. Right? But killing journalism, not so good. Right? That's all at the same time. And the only way that we can save us from technology is not to say that we reject it, because that is really not possible. Right? You can reject technology if you're extremely rich or extremely independent. But the future is going to be technology everywhere. There's no escape, not even the mountains of Switzerland or the Amish country. Right? We need to figure out how we make this positive, so we need rules, social contracts, ethics, regulation, collaboration. If Facebook wants to be here in the future, they're going to have to do the right thing. It's not easy to say what the right thing is, right? My suggestion would be, for example, to change the algorithm so that it doesn't just give you the most powerful feed where you come back for more. Right? It gives you a more balanced view. Right? So basically in this world we're now experiencing, this is very unique to us right now, we're living in a world where we essentially are at the takeoff point of the exponential curve. You've heard about Moore's law and Metcalfe's law, but you know, in the beginning of the curve, 0.01, you double, 0.02, 0.04, and it's still nothing. Right? But today we're here, right? We're at 4. Consider yourself lucky because, you know, I spent 15 years of my life trying to start things in the beginning of the curve and they just wouldn't work. You know. I started a company like Spotify in 2001. I was just too early. Right? So we spent $20 million trying to do something that wouldn't work. You know? So that's stuff that you learn, but basically we're at the point where everything that used to be impossible is becoming doable. Right? It's very important to notice this. You know, we cannot continue to think linear in this world because when you go 4, 8, 16, 32, in 5 or 6 years, we're 30 times as far. 30 times. If you go 30 times up the scale, you go straight in the sky. Right? 1 billion through the exponential. So the kids of our kids will never know how to drive a car because the car will drive itself. Right? You will have a special permit to drive a car. They will never know what it means to actually use gas, right, in the car. They probably won't know what a book is. Right? They may still know one in the museum. Right? They may refuse how to learn the language because, you know, the computer does it. So it becomes a different life when you're looking at this, and basically what's happening is that in this future, this is the challenge for us, it's not just exponential, right? It's also combinatorial and interdependent. So it's combining all of the changes at the same time. If you take Airbnb or Uber, right, it's the cloud, it's mobile, it's big data, right, it's tracking, it's the Internet of Things, all together. So if you're in business, you have to look at it like this. You have to say, well, it's a puzzle, right? It's not just one thing. And so you have to be aware of what that does. And this is our key challenge, really, today. I think you feel the same way that I do. Humans are not exponential. We do get older, and we do learn, some of us. But, you know, machines are outperforming us. And today that's not really true, but in 5 years, game over to compete with machines. So what is happening is that we are not increasing, we're just slowly getting along. And this is the tough part for us. Technology is exponential, humans are not. And in fact, you could say that nature is an S-curve, right? Nature is cyclical. So nature goes up, then there's a major disaster, it goes down, something else comes up, goes up again, right? So humans are like this, like an S-curve. And technology is like this. And out of this, we are facing various challenges. For example, how do we protect humanity? I mean, think about this for a second, right? Technology is concerned with efficiency, speed, optimization. Humans are not about efficiency. I mean, we're the utterly inefficient people. We lie, we cheat, we make up stories, we make mistakes. Right? We miss things, we fall asleep, you know. It's completely unpredictable. And we have feelings, right? I mean, imagine, right? What a mess. Computers are not like this. So we're living on the opposite. This is really a big challenge for us because, you know, quite clearly in this world now, we're facing a future that is vastly powerful because now we're essentially merging with technology. I mean, the mobile phone, wearable computing, virtual reality, prostheses, and then connecting directly to the internet. Elon Musk wants to do a company called Neuralace that connects my neocortex directly to the internet. Right? Is that a good idea? Who does not want to be superhuman? Right? There's not a single person who doesn't want to live forever and be superhuman, be God, essentially, right? I mean, I would admit myself, I would love to be, But I think if I would connect directly to the internet with my brain, right, I probably would never want to be without it. Because I would feel small, if I'm not connected. It's like a permanent Viagra, Is that a good idea? I'm not so sure, I think that sounds a lot like a drug, like a simulation. Right? But fact is, humanity will change more in the next 20 years than the previous 300 years. And this is not an overstatement, because 300 years ago we had the Industrial Revolution, maybe before that we had the printing press. That was all really big. But today, technology is changing us, inside of us. Right? There's the first tools that are nanobots in your bloodstream. Right? So if you have high cholesterol, the nanobot goes inside and cleans it up. It's not allowed yet, but just a question of time. Technology is changing us, so changing our DNA, artificial intelligence, help us think faster. That's completely different than having a steam engine, or a car, or a television, or the internet, which is outside of us. So this is our future. We're becoming superhuman. Now, many ways you could say that's a good thing. I think it's 90% good, right? But the challenge is that we would overdo it. The challenge is that we would say, if I can live to be 150 years old, and I can connect directly to the internet, I can rule the world. Putin already said this, right? Putin said the first country that reaches artificial general intelligence, which is the top level of artificial intelligence, will rule the world. And of course, it's going to be Russia, right? Needless to say. But we have an arms race: America, India, Russia, China. That is like nuclear power, same thing, but for artificial intelligence. So, is this my future? And I would submit to you, I think that sounds interesting because I can be super smart. But what would I be missing here? I probably wouldn't get much sleep because I'm always thinking. But is this what I want to be? Right? Do I want to be super smart but no longer human? Is that a good deal? I don't think it is. But then it goes like this, right? I'm going to end up like this. Is that a good idea? Silicon Valley, to a large degree, thinks it's a good idea. And so does China. Right? Merging with technology. What is called transcending humanity. This is the most interesting euphemism you can think of. And we're going to transcend humanity because, primarily because it makes a lot of money. Right? We can buy a lot of interesting equipment. I mean, this is already happening. I'm sure you can agree with this, right? We love technology. Technology is, in fact, the new religion. We're believers in technology. This is not far-fetched in many ways. This is the new way that we pray, right? Along with dataism and hyper-efficiency. And this is what's happening to us now. We have the same cards that we had hundreds of years ago. Morals, values, ethics, humanity. The stuff that's hard to explain. And technology is getting a new card every 5 weeks or so, right? There's a new thing. I mean, if you put all the trends of technology on this wall, it would cover the entire wall. Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, cloud computing, traveling to other planets, human gene manipulation, GMOs, endless. Ariana Huffington from the Huffington Post says, technology has been very good at giving us what we want, but less good at giving us what we need. And what do we need as humans? Well, it's simple, right? What is the answer? Money? No, just kidding. Huh? Yes. We need other humans. Right? That is what humans need. I mean, humans are based on relationships. That is the most human thing. Experiences, connections. Right? We don't actually work with data. We're based on relationships. The most lonely people in the world are the power users of social networks. Okay? Lots of studies on this show that if you constantly use a social network like Instagram and Facebook, chances are very high that you will be a depressed and lonely person. And you know, the number one killer in the world is actually not cancer, it's loneliness. So lots of studies on this. It's not to say that it's bad to use a social network, but in the extreme it could make you really quite lonely. So in positive psychology, this is Martin Seligman, who talks about positive psychology. This is what we want, right? It's called PERMA. Positivity, engagement, relationships, meaning, and accomplishment. And can machines provide this? Right? Can technology make us happy? You know, when you're using a mobile phone to connect with people using Instagram or WhatsApp or so, it's like it's a momentary feeling of happiness. Right? Lasts about a second and a half. And it can last longer, right? But you know, you can buy a phone and then you feel happy for a week. You have a new phone. When you take the same money and you go hiking in the mountains with your kids, you think of that for the rest of your life. It's the experience. And that's the difference. Technology provides happiness, but technology will not make us happy. Happiness is beyond the point of technology. So the biggest challenge is not the machines will kill us, right? Forget everything that you've seen in Hollywood. You know, Ex Machina and all of the other movies, that's just entertainment. Right? Machines are nowhere close to being anywhere as smart as being able to do that. They may eventually get there. But the biggest challenge is that we do not become like machines. So the other day I was in London in front of a restaurant with a few friends. We're looking to have dinner, and we're looking inside the restaurant. And there's a lot of happy people eating, talking, you know, it looks like a great place. We open up TripAdvisor. TripAdvisor says, oh, it's the worst place. It's just totally bad. Right? Go to the place next door. Right? Next door, there's nobody. Right? And TripAdvisor says this is the best place you can go to. Right? And what do we think? We think maybe TripAdvisor is right. Right? Because technology knows better. So, for example, now we have technology that will diagnose your embryo after a week of pregnancy. So you can do your DNA test, you can diagnose the embryo, and then the machine will say, you know, there's a likelihood that this baby will not be very smart, right? Or it will be sick. So what do we do then? We'll just tell the technology to make the decision about the future, right? Or do we believe it, or do we not believe it? Should we be allowed to believe it? So those are the decisions that are coming up very soon. Clearly, the world is run by technology. And I'm not saying this badly. Most of these companies are my clients, so I'm very happy. But the old power used to be the oil companies and the banks. You know, I live in Switzerland, so the banks, right? All the power in the world was oil, gas, nuclear, military, and banks. Today, 2016, we're going to publish a slideshow later. You can see it better, right? The top powerful companies in the world, Apple, Google, Alphabet, Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook, and there's still ExxonMobil in there, right? The power of society is now the tech companies. And that's not a bad thing, they've earned it, okay? Because, you know, they're fast-moving companies that can really invent the future, okay? But imagine if we hadn't regulated oil. If we hadn't regulated oil and gas, we would be drilling up and down the California coast every 2 miles. We would be sitting here at 750 ppm, which is the CO2, right? Not at 450, which is bad enough. Does it mean they went out of existence? No, they were regulated and they had to do something. Well, not enough, but the other part is that artificial intelligence, you know, thinking machines, is the new electricity. So you can have huge number of data, you know, huge sets of data, but if you don't have a machine looking at it, there's no way it can make sense. And that's what AI is doing now. It's analyzing. Amazon is looking at all of your purchases, all of your clicks, all of your connections, and then the machine says, Gerd will probably buy this. It's using an intelligent machine or software to give me this. So you see, what's happening here is that artificial intelligence is the number one area for investment. You know what this means is that this is the biggest thing since the internet started. I mean, every day you open up the web, right? There's 100 reports about these guys are using AI to replace lawyers. And the doctor will be replaced by a robot. And the driver is replaced by the driverless car. And the pilot will be kicked out, and so on and so on, right? So this is a gold mine. This is a true gold rush. I'm not saying we shouldn't get involved, but we have to think about what that means ultimately. Artificial intelligence is the capability of computer systems to do what we used to do, to become intelligent in some way. Now, we don't really know how people are intelligent. I mean, we kind of know, but there's lots of pieces missing. So when you think about artificial intelligence, don't think of artificial humans. That is a long time away. Ex Machina, you may have seen the movie. Think of this, right? Self-driving car. Is this car intelligent? Yeah, it can drive, right? But that's it. You can't really talk to it. It can't play chess. It can't talk to the 2-year-old. It can't buy something for you. It's as dumb as a toaster outside of driving a car. Right? I mean, it's very useful, but it's not intelligent like us. I mean, you drive a car, chances are you can drive a van, or maybe a motorcycle, or a truck, right? Within reason. A computer could never do that. It does one thing, right? It learns how to do the warehouse, right? So you can do that. It learns how to be a smart robot, Baxter, right? But Baxter is the same thing. A human worker does 1,000 things instantly. Baxter we have to teach. We're going to see Baxter and computers and robots like this everywhere. But will they actually replace human complexity? I think right now artificial intelligence is replacing other machines, mostly, not humans. Eventually they'll replace more humans, so we're going to have an issue here. But I mean, this box from Google now called Google Lens, it's a new Google mobile phone. It's actually capable of holding it up over a shop or a book or a wine bottle and tells you what it is. I mean, it's very useful. But as a human, if you do this, what do you see when you look at this meatball shop? You see 2,000 things in 0.2 seconds, right? You smell it, you hear it, you see the traffic, you see people inside, you have an association with meatballs. It's like a whole chain of things, right? That's what we do. There's no computer that can be looking at this like this in the same way. So it's still very useful, but it's not human. And so the idea is, for example, now in the US, you have the first software that can act as a judge, right, on probation. So if you're going to go back out to the street after you've committed a crime, the computer system looks at all the records and looks at your video and says this person is probably going to do it again. Okay? And this computer system is allegedly more reliable than the judge. That brings up all kinds of issues. Right? Paul Saffo, who's a futurist colleague, says we should never mistake a clear view for a short distance. So it is clear that computers will replace much of our work, but it's not a short distance. Okay? That doesn't mean it's not going to happen. We have to be prepared, but it'll be a long time before I can take a self-driving car on the Autobahn in Germany to do what I do now, which is to go 250 and chase a few other cars. Right? That would be very dangerous. Will the self-driving car replace the local bus? Absolutely. Very quickly. Right? But driving on Highway 1 in California where the cliff is 20 feet from you, right? One mistake, you're dead. That probably won't happen for a long time. But I was thinking as I was looking at artificial intelligence, maybe the president of the US is already an AI because, of all the decisions that he makes, in sort of a human form, a badly programmed AI. That would be my hope, But anyway, Luciano Floridi, who is a researcher, It says that algorithms outperform humans when it is not about anything human. Right? Understanding, emotions, intentions, interpretations, deep skills. Right? We have to keep this in mind. You know, right now what artificial intelligence does, it does things that don't require any of those skills that we would otherwise employ. So if you have kids, right, you don't want your kids to learn anything that does not require human skills, because the computer will do it. I'll show you some examples shortly, but clearly what we're seeing here is, you know, Picasso said this, and Kevin Kelly from Wired magazine repeated it. You know, computers are for answers, people are for questions. Picasso said, computers are so stupid, they only give answers. And that's still very true. So we shouldn't fear computers giving answers, you know, except for when the answers are manipulated. And we should always question their answers. I think to the point of where we're going to live in a future where we don't question what computers are saying, that could be dangerous. That could be a future that I don't want to necessarily live in. So I call this issue of digital ethics, you know, basically what we have here, the power center of the universe are these companies. They have the most money, they have the most spending, they have the most lobbying, and we all use them and love some of them. Right? I mean, these companies are vastly successful. If you had invested in Facebook now, that would be the best investment you would have made in the last 2 years. I mean, if you're looking at the amount of stock, right? So connectivity, data, intelligence, power. And even governments have to worry about this. Huh? I mean, Facebook wants to be essentially a government, right? I mean, they've said so much that they want to govern the world, right? I mean, it's a modest claim, I suppose. Right? So just to keep riding around on Facebook, you know, if you're looking at what happened in the last couple of weeks, 127 million people were influenced by advertising campaigns funded by $75 million yeah, by Russian entities. Nobody knows exactly what that is or was, right? But clearly 127 million people in the US were influenced by negative or positive things like this, right? These are the ads, some of the ads that were created by fake accounts, you know, both on the, like, you know, Clinton is Saturn, you know, Hillary, of course, and you know, keeping people out of the US, and, you know, a huge amount of things. Now, this brings up a huge ethical problem. If you like the free market, you would say, well, who cares? You know, this is anybody can buy ads. No, Facebook is not responsible. But given that 40% of people in the US, right, read their news on Facebook, I mean, there's no way we can ignore this. I mean, you could essentially program people on this. Right? So here's the question, you know, I think in the future we're going to need to think about digital ethics. And in my book I have proposed a digital ethics council. It's hard to say what exactly that would look like. I mean, we do have various councils already. But, you know, in this future, I mean, who's going to decide where we're going with this? Do we need supervision? Clearly, just to use the definition from Potter Stewart, ethics is knowing the difference between what you have a right or the power to do and what is the right thing to do. Facebook has every right in the world to make as much money as they can. Right? But is it the right thing to do? Is it the right thing to do to sell human connections into a network of manipulation? That's the key question. That question goes for Google, for any company that's in technology. So sometimes ethics means you don't do things, right? Even though you could make a lot of money. That thought is foreign, of course, in America. But so this is our challenge, really. Huh? As technology is running the world, ultimately, who's mission control? It certainly isn't us. It's not you. It's not us. Right? Mission control is Silicon Valley. I lived there for 17 years. You know, I'm not saying this badly. This is a fact. Right? And China is the next mission control. We've got to do something about this. We need to get our own mission control for Europe. This is clearly a big topic because we have other objectives. It's funny when you do research, and I talk to people about the future, and I ask them about how man and machine are converging. Everybody in Europe says that's not a good idea because we want to remain human. And in Silicon Valley, everybody says, well, that's our future, right? We're going to become one with technology. We're humanists, right? That is what defines Europe. So, Elon Musk says there should be some regulatory oversight at international level to make sure we don't kill ourselves. I would agree with that, but I'm going to augment a little bit, and I would say, well, the most promising future is one where we don't hinder innovation, but neither do we dismiss the exponential risk, and we say this is somebody else's business. In other words, every business plan has to include the consequences. In America, the gun lobby says, guns don't kill people, people kill people. Now, this has got to be the cheapest excuse that you can ever think of. Right? I mean, Richard Oppenheimer built the nuclear bomb to prevent the Germans from having one. That was probably a good thing. But, the government used it to do Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Was he responsible? Well, I would say he was, but of course, it's not as simple as that. But we need accountability here, right? In this world, we're moving into a world where it's dramatically changing what we are as humans. I'm going to use the Future of Life Institute guidance on this. Elon Musk is also an investor in this company, on this outfit called the Future of Life. And they talk about how we can keep technology human. Okay? There's 4 principles I want to suggest. I know there's lots of government people here also, so this is what I would suggest. Point number 1, everything should provide human value. This is the ultimate thing that we want. Right? Human value does not equate to stock market value. Okay? There is a difference. Human value means all systems should respect human dignity. The second one should be shared benefit and prosperity. We don't have that. Technology has led to more monopolization, has not created equality. The third one, we have to think of ecosystems, ethical, economical, and societal issues. As long as we keep saying, well, let's say if we can stop people from dying, right? And there's lots of companies in Silicon Valley who are doing this, called the end of dying, right? Using genome editing. Some companies say that's roughly a $100 trillion business. That sounds really enterprising, but would only the rich people get to do this? I mean, that brings up all kinds of problems. So we have to think of ecosystems, responsibility. Those that design or build these systems are moral stakeholders. If you build the Internet of Things, if you build artificial intelligence, you are a stakeholder. And you have to act accordingly. I think that's the future that we're going towards. This is clearly what's going to happen, right? The global brain. Right now it's just the mobile phone and some internet data that's going up to the brain. But what's going to go up to the brain very soon is all of your spending, all of your health records, all of your movements, all of your purchases is going into this brain. It's all becoming connected. And whoever runs this brain has mission control. Right? That could be terrible, could be really good, depending on how you look at it, but clearly the question is no longer soon if technology can do something, because the answer will always be yes. Today we're sitting here and saying, well, how much will it cost to do this kind of software or a mobile app or whatever, right? In 10 years we're going to sit here and say, well, everything that we want is instantly possible because technology has no limits. 10 years. And then the question is why, right? Why are we doing this and who is doing it? It's a question of why. So let's talk about work and jobs, and then we'll go to the questions, okay? Bottom line is, anything that can be digitized or automated will be. Okay? That is called digital Darwinism, okay? So, basically what that means is whatever has those capabilities of being automated is actually going to be done. So, driving, simple bookkeeping, fast food, financial advice, flying a plane, even though I would say we probably won't fly with a plane that does not have an actual pilot for social reasons. But I mean, the Oxford report says in some countries between 50 and 60%. Call centers, I mean, what's the last time you called a call center, right? Roughly 40 million people work in the call center business. 39 of them, 30 million will no longer work there in 10, 15 years. Because machines can learn this, right? They can actually do this. So the flip side is, anything that cannot be digitized or automated becomes hugely valuable. That is our future. And we have to remind ourselves of this, that the difference to machines is that we are not machines. You know? We may not be superior to machines because of the limitations that we have, but we're actually organisms. As Kahneman has said, Daniel Kahneman, the world-renowned psychologist, we don't think with the brain, we think with the body. I mean, can you imagine this? We actually exist. Machines don't exist. They exist in a 0 or 1 kind of space. So this is our future, and this is what our kids have to learn. Emotions, compassion, creativity, imagination, breaking the rules, coming up with new things. And the funny part is that most of what we're doing today in schools is exactly the opposite. No emotions, planning, execution, logic, math, calculation, following the old business model, that people are essentially robots. I mean, the reality is, if you work like a robot, you will not have a job. Don't work like a robot. Don't teach your kids to work like a robot. Anything that's robotic, give it away. And I think that's a good future. It's just going to be hard when you are working like a robot, like let's say you work at fast food and you flip the burger from left to right. You know, a job is a job. Even though it's robotic, it's still a job. Right? So we need to be prepared to capture those people. The person that's actually doing the hamburger thing in the fast food place, they will not become a designer next week. We're going to have to think a little bit deeper to capture them, and transfer them and get new skills going. So basically, this kind of scenario, I mean, if that's how you're working today, for example, many lawyers work like this, right? It's just kind of robotic legal work. Machines can learn that. Right? They haven't learned that because they weren't really capable of reading us. But just look at IBM Watson and many others. I mean, there's hundreds of companies that are on this field. New skills we're going to need. The World Economic Forum says the new skills of tomorrow are kind of the flip side of yesterday. Critical thinking, creativity, emotional intelligence, cognitive flexibility, right brain. Well, there's no such thing as right brain or left brain. This would be stupid, right? I mean, everybody knows that's not the case, right? But we used to call that right brain, which is the emotional part of how we think. Right? I mean, the number one skill that people want from employees today is not smartness. It's not diplomas. It's not all that stuff. It's emotional intelligence. They want somebody who can figure out how to make it all fit. And how do you learn that? Well, you don't go to college learning emotional intelligence. I don't know if the MBA comes with that, but clearly, if your brain is mostly on the left side, you won't have a job. Even a scientist, even a programmer. I mean, a programmer is a good job today, but in 5 years, I mean, computers will program themselves. Today, you want to build an app for e-commerce, you get a programmer builds it, right? In the future, you say to Alexa, build an app for my car company. Done. Right? Well, it's not hard, it's just complicated, but... So, a quick summary, and then we'll go into the question. First, the future is no longer a time frame. The future is not tomorrow. The future is already here. As again, William Gibson says, the future is already here. It's just unevenly distributed. If you happen to be unlucky and you haven't actually seen the future, you're in deep trouble. Right? Because to see the future is how to prepare for it. Right? The future is a mindset. And I would say that especially small countries, like this one, or Switzerland, where I live, we really have to start understanding the future. That is the most fundamental skill. You have to have the imagination. So instead of looking at the record selling CDs, you look at the cloud. Instead of selling cars, you sell mobility. Instead of looking to sell banking services, you sell the blockchain. I mean, that's the kind of future thinking that we have to have. Okay. Second, technology. Steve Jobs used to say in every keynote that he had held, the most important word in his keynote, rest in peace, was magic. He talked about the magic technology, and it was true, it was magical. Magic iPad, magic phone, magic this, magic that, right? We want to make sure that our technology is magic, it's not manic, which is people going crazy about it, and it's not toxic. Right? So using something like HR analytics that analyzes all of your people in the company, right, and sees what their value is based on the emails and the LinkedIn posts, right? That is toxic. That's not magic. That's toxic when you say, well, this person rating on the algorithm is 84, so they can stay, and the 82 has to go. Right? I mean, that's called reductionism. So let's be very careful with technology. Let's also focus on two things. Our future is going to be about technology and algorithms, but as I say in the book, our future is about us, the androrhythms, the human things. Let's not make a mistake. You don't invest in technology, you won't get to see the future. Right? Because technology is how everything works now. But in 5 or 10 years, the key point about your existence will not be if you use smart technology. Right? It'll be about who you are, what you stand for. So we have to invest in both, and we have to strive for balance. And to strive for balance, we need government. We need public officials. We need, like the new 37-year-old Prime Minister of New Zealand, right? She's a woman, 37 years old. She understands this stuff. Right? That's the kind of politicians we need in the future. We need people who understand this, because we're making major decisions about all of this today. So that's a very, very big challenge for politicians, who most of them have their emails printed, right? So we need to think about where this is going. So ultimately, it means to do this, we have to be careful what we bet on. Right? We call this team human or team robots. I think being on team human is a key differentiator. Even if you make robots, you can be on team human, right? Which means you want to do things that are good for the collective good of humanity, right? Not just for your bottom line. Lots of companies are following that sign right now. So I end with the last theme for my book. The book says we have to embrace technology, but don't become it. Because when we embrace technology, we have progress, we can solve big things, we see good things. But when we become technology, we become useless. Thanks very much for listening.
Veľká vďaka, many thanks. Ani ste nedýchali, ak ste počúvali, mne to nedá jednu rýchlu takú minútovú záležitosť, že čo nás teda čaká, to nebo alebo peklo, ako to vidíte vy, kto je za nebo? Čiže ideme do pekla všetci aj s technológiami? OK, tak teda máme naozaj ale krátky čas na otázky, 5 minút približne, 5 minutes for questions, maybe. Čakala som, že bude rád na otázky, ako bol na knižku. Chce sa niekto pýtať rýchlo, alebo prejdeme k otázkam, ktoré máme v slajde?
Want to pick one of those, or
yes,
yeah, or any, we can actually ask the
not yet.
Question in person. I want to use slide. Okay. So let's pick this one. Where do you see government's role in the future heavily disrupted by technology? Well, government's role primarily will be in the future to safeguard us as humans. Because technology will be incredibly powerful, so the chances are that everything that we do is going to be touched by technology. So somebody has to say, well, the good part of technology we want, and the bad parts we have to prevent. And are companies like Google, Facebook, Baidu, Alibaba, and are they going to prevent their own progress because it's good for us, that's unlikely. They may eventually get around to that thinking, and then some of them are talking about this. Right? Mark Zuckerberg talks about it. But what can you do? Right? This is one of the biggest money makers in history. Right? So we need government to help us to regulate and to create social contracts and to create a balance. Right? So we need government to be sort of the in-between between that too radical future and to protect us from things that, you know, for example, you can say today, well, if you don't like Facebook, just leave Facebook. You know, you can do that. But Facebook is kind of like an infrastructure now. Right? I mean, for me, if I left Facebook, I would have 75% less traffic on my websites. If you're a publisher, you know what I'm talking about, right? If you're a medium or a publisher or TV or radio, Facebook is the #1 place. So can we leave Facebook? Yes, in principle we can. But it would be much better if Facebook was put into a position to actually do the right thing. And that's what we need government for. Not just local government, but also international government. And the other thing for government is, you know, how, for example, did we prevent a nuclear war? Well, we had 2 bombs that were thrown, and we saw what they do, and then we said we don't want this to happen every other week. So we agreed on the terms of how we're going to prevent it, called the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaties, NPTs. And yes, we have North Korea, we have Iran, but so far it has worked. Right? We have to do the same thing with artificial intelligence, because it has the same potential, and with human genome editing, you know, changing our DNA, because they have the same potential. So that's going to be very important for governments. How they will do that, I think that's a good question. This is a huge stretch for government. Other questions? Okay. We have tweets too. Okay. So, Sarah, thank you. If we have the capacity to create a robot which are able to think instead of us, why do not prefer to spend time in increasing our minds? Okay, I hope I get this right? But basically, okay, let's make no mistake about this. Machines, robots, software does not think like us. Okay? It is a machine. Okay? Very powerful machine. Machines think in zeros and ones. Humans, if I ask you your opinion today, you say, well, it's like this. Tomorrow I ask you again, you say, it's like this. You change your mind. Right? Or you were telling a lie. Right? Humans are not zeros and ones. We have 1,000 different points of data. Right? And that is what makes us human, that we can change our mind, we can be influenced. And machines don't think like humans. They are data-driven. Right? That makes them extremely useful. There's a thing called the Moravec paradox. I think this was a Hungarian researcher, Hans Moravec, who said that whatever is very simple for a computer is hard for a human, right? And whatever is simple for a human is hard for a machine. Right? And that is going to be our future. So I don't think we should fear machines that can think, as long as we don't give them the capacity to surpass the kind of thinking that we want them to have. So this will be really a question of ultimately using machines to their benefit. And I think, you know, if we can use a machine, for example, as a doctor, you know, if you're a doctor, I've discussed with many doctors, there's 4,200 new oncology reports, you know, cancer reports every week. 4,200. If you're a doctor in a cancer hospital, are you going to read 4,200 reports before you make the rounds in the cancer? You can't, right? It's just not going to happen. The computer can read all of the reports. You can ask the computer about this CAT scan or MRI. The computer will recognize that he has seen it 1.3.4 million times already, and he can say something about it. That does not make the computer a doctor. It makes the computer have knowledge. But humans aren't just about knowledge. Right? We go way beyond knowledge. So I think we should worry about it, but I think it's too early to say that we're going to be replaced by those robots. You know, I think there's too many things that make us human that we don't even know why they make us human. Other questions?
Thanks. Maybe yes.
Right? Personal question?
Sorry, ak nie je niekto naživo naozaj, veď sme tu face to face, zatiaľ využíme to, že nemusíme robiť konferenciu úplne iba cez zariadenia. Nie, no, OK.
Okay, we'll take one more here. How will the inequality between nations and countries play out? That's a good question. Inequality means economic benefit is given only to select few. Inequality is the number one reason for terrorism. So basically people that don't have a chance resort to terrorism because that's the only interesting option left, because inequality means they're completely gone anyway. Inequality is a huge problem because it's created by extreme markets. So to make technology better, we have to distribute the benefits of technology. That is the key. For example, if we're going to have the Internet of Things and smart cities, it would be very bad policy if we said, well, all of the European cities will become smart, they save gas, reduce pollution, that's great, right? But never mind the Asian cities or the African cities, they can go to hell because they don't have money to buy this tech. Right? That's a bad idea. What we need to do is to say we're going to license this technology under terms that they can afford, so that they can become equal. And this is a question of public policy, is a question of, ultimately our economic system isn't very well suited for creating equality. Because, basically right now, the more unequal you are, the more money you make. That needs to change. So basically lots of people have talked about it. In roughly 20 years, we're going to see a new form of economy emerging. That's called the post-capitalism, or sustainable capitalism. And that has three objectives, so not just profit, but people, planet, profits. And some people are already working on a new kind of stock market for those kind of companies. And this is, I think, what technology is forcing us to do. I want to finish. I think we have to finish.
Maybe
right?
last question.
One more last question.
One
okay,
more
I'll
last.
finish. I'll have a final comment on this later. But
Maybe
another question?
This
More?
first one,
Okay.
what we should do for this future.
Oh, okay. What we should do. Oh, it's simple, But, well, the first thing we need to do is to be aware of these things and discuss them publicly, because that changes your opinion. Okay? And we need to force every politician, every mayor, every public person to address the issues that are emerging here. And the second thing is we should remain positive. It sounds like it's all going to go to hell, but it's actually not. Right? 90% of these things are extremely powerful. They may be just too powerful. So it's basically having an optimism, even though there's lots of people talking about bad things, right? And as a side note, it's probably a good idea to ignore all of the films and stuff you see from Hollywood, right? Because that's not the future, that's entertainment. Right? We should spend about 5 to 10% of our time looking at beyond what's happening today, right? Looking at tomorrow is very important. And I think otherwise we need to focus on our human skills. If we have kids, that's what they should be learning. In an ideal world, our kids would know everything about technology, but they would be great humanists. Right? Artists, designers, storytellers. Because the only thing that machines can't do is all the things that it takes a human to do. And that's going to be our future. So I want to wrap up by saying, basically, I'm an optimist. I think what we're seeing now is 90% positive and 10% not so good. But the 10% are threatening to grow. And so what we need to do is we need to come together to make sure the 10% get, 5% or 4%, not 50. Right? Because there's nothing we can do about technology growing exponentially. There's no opt-out button here. And we need to come together to make sure technology remains positive and a positive force. Thanks very much for listening.